All right, the first door approach is going to be with a regular doctor's office lead, and then I'll do a door approach with the fair lead. Do the doctor's office approach first.
Okay. Hello.
Hi there, are you Lance Morrison?
I am.
Lance, my name is Tad.
Okay.
And I'm working with Home Health Education Service. We received this card not very long ago for
Oh, that was
information.
quick.
Yeah, on our set of Bible story books. We're just in the area. We had a little gift for you, and a couple samples are showing. We get credit even if you don't order anything. You have a minute or two?
Yeah, we're interested.
All right, let me just
Come on in.
let me grab it from the car real quick.
Okay.
All right, so that's the doctor's office approach, and then we'll do the fair lead.
Fair lead. Okay, just pretend that's a fair lead. Hello.
Hi, are you Lance Morrison?
I am.
Tad Stauffer. I had met you at the Mountain State Fair several weeks ago. We were tying blues for the kids.
Oh, yeah,
Had a
yeah.
drawing for a set of
Yeah.
Bible story books. Well, you had filled the card out to win that. We had a grand prize winner in Brevard, but we have a gift for everybody.
All right.
And we also had we have a little gift in the car and a couple samples. We get credit even if you don't order anything.
Okay.
You have a minute or two?
Yeah, we're interested. We'd
All
love
right.
to look
Let
at
me
it.
just grab it real quick from the
Okay.
car.
Thank you. Come on
Can I
in.
let myself in? Thanks,
Yeah,
Lance.
come on in.
Appreciate that.
Sit right here in our comfortable
Oh
little
yeah, this
chairs
is
by the
nice.
kitchen table.
I'm gonna want to kick this thing back. Those lazy boys, nice. I've been working hard all day, you know. Actually, you're my first entrance, so I'm not breaking a sweat yet.
All right, all right.
Well, Lance, I appreciate you guys stopping by the booth there the other day.
Yeah.
When you saw them at the fair, was it the first time you ever seen them?
Yeah, I hadn't seen those. We had seen those other
The blue
other
ones?
Bibles. Yeah, the blue ones. Yeah.
Yeah, those were ones that we came out with years ago.
Okay.
That's we still have these.
They're
of course.
available,
They're
okay.
still available. But we kind of brought it into the 21st century. I'm going to show you some. We've got some technology involved with the books too,
Okay.
that's appealing to the children of this day. But so you live in the area
I do. I've been here all my life.
all your life?
All my life. Yeah.
You work in.
Yeah, I
Charlotte?
work over here at DuPont.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been there for about 6 years. They laid me off once, but now I got a full-time, looks like work's going well.
That's great.
Yeah.
How many children do you have?
We have 3,
3 kids.
and they're
okay.
they're 1, 3, and 5.
1, 3, and 5.
Yeah.
Keeps you busy. Boys,
Yeah. All
girls?
girls.
All girls.
All girls.
Okay, I'm sorry for you. But no, I'm just kidding.
They're a lot of fun. Yeah, I kept trying for a boy, but you know I'm going to be broke if I keep trying for a little boy. Maybe
yeah.
in the future.
I've got 2 boys and a girl. They're
Okay.
all teenagers now. But,
Are they?
yeah.
Yeah, I started a little late.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, better late than never, I
Yeah.
guess is what they say. But just so you know a little something about our organization, it's a Christian organization.
Okay.
We work with all the churches,
Good.
generally except for Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons because they got a lot of their own material.
That was my wife's question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But everybody else has been using them. But it's more than just selling or promoting a product. It's about helping families spiritually today.
Okay.
Young people are growing up in serious times. They say it's going to be more difficult to raise our young people with good Christian values than it was several generations ago. And some people want to know why. Some authorities suggest 4 areas of concern where kids are getting into trouble. One was lack of family time together.
Okay.
The other one was too much exposure to media.
Mm.
Third was peer pressure. And the last one was a lack of spiritual training. Now, they all can have an effect on a child's life, but Lance, if you were to pick one of those as being the biggest issue that you see, which one do you say? The family time, media, peer pressure, or the lack of spiritual training?
You know, I think it's the social media. My kids I see the older kids, not my 1, 3, and 5-year-old, but I see that taking over, that they're always on their iPad. So we're worried about making sure we don't spend our whole life on
the
internet
tablets,
or yes.
stuff like that.
That's
yeah.
our biggest concern.
It's a good concern. The real concern that they found about the media is the steady flow of violence and immorality that kids can have exposure to.
Right.
They found an average child today, by the time they reach 18 and graduate from high school, will have watched 22 to 25,000 hours of television, and only half the time spent in the classroom. So TV and internet have become the new teachers today.
Yes, they have.
But unfortunately, the food for thought can be questionable at times. Then we have peer pressure. You can't always be around when the kids are making their friends. Sometimes as parents we'd like to strap a camera on them, do a little surveillance, you know, that would be impractical. So the third area, or the last area, was lack of spiritual training.
Mm.
It's interesting, that they would choose that one because they're not a Christian organization. But they found that children who are trained morally and spiritually do better in society. Even if they don't go to church later on, they were still better citizens. And you know where they put the emphasis? In the home.
Nice.
Because although church can play a role, we're not endorsing any particular denomination or saying it's unimportant, but it usually just comes once a week. Whereas television can be every day, school's 5 days a week, and of course, there's not a lot of religious instruction in the classroom today, is there?
No, no, and we go to church and, you know, we're very much wanting to have a Christian home. So
That's
why
great.
we're interested in these.
That's excellent. But that's where, you know, where this comes in, is that you can do it at, you know, it's the best opportunities they have to learn about God or the Bible is, of course, what we as parents do with them at home.
Right.
You know.
I agree.
Sometimes parents have told us they want to teach their children about the Bible, but sometimes they find parts hard to read and understand themselves. If we're honest, sometimes it can be difficult for us, you know, to read some of it. So
Yeah.
that's why the Bible series and other books have come out. They're easy to read and understand. Now, I couldn't bring all the books with me today, Lance. We would have had to bring a bigger briefcase, and folks would have thought I was trying to move in. So we did the next best thing. This is a fold-out that shows you everything, pretty much everything that we carry, complete family library. There are, we have 4 sets of Bible stories. We have a set of bedtime stories. We do have several, we have a couple medical series, one on the healing power of foods, the healing power of herbs. We have a set on the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation, helps unlock some of those the symbolism that you see in there.
Right.
But you had, you know, you had requested information on the children's
Yes.
Bible stories, and so I'll show you those first. There's 7 volumes to it. The first 3 volumes are the Old Testament, the next 3 are the New, and the last one on the end is called The Greatest Battle. And it looks at the history of Christianity for the last 2,000 years. Now they're all made with a hardback, it's a white clean cover. They got some raised lettering, and you can feel that it's a nice
yeah, that's
book.
Nice.
The pages are glued and sewn, every page to a cloth binding.
Okay.
And so they're built to last, something that you can pass on to the next generation. The artwork, as you can see, they're not using cartoons or sketches, but they're actual paintings. And there's about 700 illustrations in the set. So they're not just reading it, they're seeing it. And they're going to learn the Bible that way quicker as well. Now the stories are relatively short, but they do have lessons that they draw out from each story. And they do have a reference to the Bible in every story, so you can look it up in Scripture. Then they have a second reference here, and that's to our adult commentary. That's the maroon set you see down there. It's equivalent to about a second-year seminary degree. So parents can read it too on their level, and they can get more insight into the stories that are going through it for the kids. Now they're very accurate to the Bible. They're not adding or taking away from it. Of course, we're not supposed to do that, are we?
No.
And just to illustrate that is the story of the flood. Now, as I was growing up, I was taught, like most people were, that the animals went in just 2 by 2, 2 of each. Is that how you were taught?
Yeah.
Seen that before?
That's all that went in, right?
Well, actually, I was looking at this painting, and the ours is painted some by 2s, but if you notice, there's more sheep. There's actually 7 of them.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I looked at, I was wondering if that was just coincidental, but I found it's intentional. It says here, let's see, imagine his surprise one day, speaking of Noah, to see the animals coming from every direction toward the ark, walking in perfect order. Some came by 2s, and some by 7s. Now, I went back to the beginning of the story and looked it up, it's in Genesis 6 and 7.
Okay.
And I looked it up, and I found something very interesting about that picture. Now, Lance, this is the family Bible that we have.
We don't have a family Bible.
No? Isn't that beautiful?
That is nice.
It's King James Version. It's one of those heirlooms that you can pass on to the next generation. It's got all your records you keep track of here in the front, the church records, marriages, the family tree, his side, her side, births and death, special events. Then at the beginning of every book of the Bible, starting with Genesis, they have an introduction to the book of the Bible, and there's an outline. Now these oil paintings, there's actually 300 oil paintings in the family Bible. And they're taken from the original blue set that came out in the 50s.
Okay.
So it's a beautiful family
They are
Bible.
gorgeous.
Now in Genesis 7, verse 2, I'll let you take a second to read it, if you wouldn't mind. Genesis
Okay.
7, verse 2. What does it say there?
7 verse 2. Okay, it says, of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by 7s, the male and his female, and of the beasts that are not clean by 2, the male and his female.
Isn't that something?
Wow.
So
Never read that.
Some
I
of them
read it,
went-
but I didn't see it.
Some of them went in by 2s, the unclean, but others went in by 7s, the clean ones. Now, The reason why folks are confused about that, it does say later on in verse 8 and 9, don't you see that? This is why people get confused about it.
My helper's on. 8 and 9 says,
Yep.
Of clean beasts and of beasts that are not clean, and of fowls and of everything that creepeth upon the earth, there went in 2 and 2 unto Noah into the ark, the male and the female, as God had commanded Noah.
So it does say they went in 2 by 2 or 2 and
Right.
2,
Right.
but that doesn't indicate necessarily how many of each. It's just how they line up to go through the door by 2s. But traditionally, folks have taken that out of context, so it was just 2 of each.
I see.
The good news is, Lance, these are not based on tradition. It's just what the Bible says.
Right.
And that's why so many folks have enjoyed them. Now, do you have any ideas why God would tell Noah to take more of the clean ones and what the difference might be?
Maybe for food or something, I don't know.
That's actually one reason.
Yeah.
That was one reason. Second reason was for sacrifice. They were on that ark for over a year, and so when they got off the ark, they were so thankful to be alive that Noah took one of each of the clean animals and of the clean birds and offered up a sacrifice, for protection. And so the other reason, of course, was for food. Originally, when God first created the earth, the original diet back in Genesis did include animals. It was just the fruits, grains, nuts, and vegetables. But when the flood came, it destroyed all that. So God told them they could eat the animals, but he told them just eat the clean ones. And the difference is found in Leviticus chapter 11, verse 1 through 3. Take a second to read that. We're doing a little Bible study here.
Yeah, I like that. No, I love using the Bible. That's 11, 1, 2, 3.
1 through 3, yeah.
And the Lord spake unto Moses and to Aaron, saying unto them, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, These are the beasts which ye shall eat among all the beasts that are on the earth. Whatsoever parteth the hoof, and is cloven-footed, and cheweth the cud among the beasts, that shall ye eat.
So
Very
any
good.
animal that had a split hoof and chewed a cud was considered for food. So if they'd only taken 2 of those kinds of animals into the ark, they would have killed one for food or sacrifice. And of course, McDonald's and Burger King wouldn't have job at it. We'd all be healthier too.
Yeah,
But it makes sense, doesn't it?
that does. Very good.
Now, Lance, you learned something from these today, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And that's where I learned it too, from the children's Bible stories. Even though they're written for children, they're not childish, and they will not insult the intelligence. Now, we had one Baptist minister ordered them just for that reason. He said, if those books are that accurate about something as little as that, he said they're probably even more accurate about the more important issues, like salvation, and indeed they are. Now, at the end of every story, Lance, there is a QR code. Are you familiar with those?
A little bit, yeah. My younger family is teaching me about that.
Okay, they're more savvy, a little technology.
Yeah.
Well, if you have a smart device, like an iPhone, iPad, you can scan that code at the end of the story, and it will actually tell the story with sound effects and audio. So it's combining the best of both worlds of technology and books together. There's also hidden treasure questions at the end that you can ask about the story to see if the kids were listening and to engage them into some conversation. Now, as I mentioned before, the books, they reference to the Bible. There's a second reference, which is referring you to the adult commentary that you can read on your level.
And that's these, right?
That right there. And I
Okay.
did bring a book along with you to show you.
Okay.
But just one story to show you as an example is the story of Moses. Now, Moses was raised up by God to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt after 400 years of bondage.
Okay.
But of course, Satan was trying to undermine that plan, and so he inspired Pharaoh to kill all the baby boys. And of course, we know the story how that Moses' mother made that basket boat and put him in it, and then he was on the Nile River. And who should find him, of course, but Pharaoh's daughter, who eventually adopted him when he was around 12 years of age. But the first 12 years of his life he spent with his biological mother. And of course, yeah, when it came time for him to leave, about 12, I'm sure that was a sad party, for them. The Bible doesn't tell us if they ever saw each other again, for sure. But those first years were very important years, in sowing those good seed into his mind. And this is taken from the Exodus 1 and 2, and from the book called Patriarchs and Prophets, chapter 22. Now, in the adult library, Lance, the first 2 are the Old Testament. The third one is on the Gospels, Desire of Ages.
Okay.
The fourth one is Acts of the Apostles from the book of Acts to Revelation. And the fifth one is on history of Christianity and prophecy. Now, I brought the first one along. This is, there's 5 books like this
Okay.
that you can get with it. And we'll go to chapter 22 and read a couple paragraphs that talks about the importance of what the parents' role in raising the children, when they're still young and impressionable. And see if we can find that here. Here it is, Moses. Here's what it says. Speaking of Moses' mother, it says, she kept the boy as long as she could, but was obliged to give him up when he was about 12 years old. From his humble cabin home, he was taken to the royal palace to the daughter of Pharaoh, and he became her son. Yet even here he did not lose the impressions he received in childhood. The lessons learned at his mother's side could not be forgotten. They were a shield from the pride, the infidelity, and the vice that flourished amid the splendor of the court. How far-reaching in its results was the influence of that one Hebrew woman, and she, an exile and a slave. The whole future life of Moses, the great mission which he fulfilled as the leader of Israel, testifies to the importance of the work of the Christian mother. There is no other work that can equal this. To a very great extent, the mother holds in her own hands the destiny of her children. She is dealing with developing minds and characters, working not alone for time, but for eternity. She is sowing seed that will spring up and bear fruit, either for good or for evil. She is not to paint a form of beauty upon canvas or to chisel it from marble, but to impress upon a human soul the image of the divine. Especially during their early years, the responsibility rests upon her of forming the character of her children. The impressions now made upon their developing minds will remain with them all through life. Parents should direct the instruction and training of their children while very young, to the end that they may be Christians. They are placed in our care to be trained, not as heirs to the throne of an earthly empire, but as kings unto God to reign through unending ages.
Very nice.
And children are a blessing from God, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
But they're a big responsibility to raise for Him. And that's why the Bible stories and the other books that have come out, they have been proven to help incorporate the principles of the Bible. And these days, parents are looking for all the help that they can find. Now, Lance, what this is often compared to is a modern convenience. These days, as families, we can spend literally hundreds, even thousands of dollars on the televisions, the DVRs, the cable, the satellite, internet, and other things that we get for our young people or for ourselves. We're not saying that the modern conveniences are wrong if they're used properly. The Bible stories and other books are kind of like a modern convenience too, but they do much more than just entertain. They develop Christian character in kids' life.
Amen.
Could you see, Lance, where this could be a blessing if you had it?
Yes, very much so. We're very interested in, I like the adult books too.
You know
I
what?
could use those.
What if I were to tell you, Lance, the author of that library, she died 100 years ago in 1950. Before her death, she penned 25 million handwritten words. 60 volumes came from her pen. She's the fourth most translated author in history of literature and the most translated female author in history. Guess how much of an education she had?
A lot, probably.
3rd grade. And yet, Time magazine said the book she wrote on the prophecy, the last one, is one of the best on Bible prophecy. And the book Desire of Ages, Library of Congress stated that out of 10,000 volumes, that's the most beautiful presentation they have on his life. Pretty amazing.
Yes, it is.
Now, I did bring the 7th volume along too.
Okay.
The 7th volume covers the last 2,000 years of Christian history and shows how prophecies have fulfilled through time and how they're fulfilling today. The first chapter is called Jerusalem Will Be Destroyed, and Jesus had predicted that event in Matthew 24. And 40 years later, it actually happened. The Roman armies came in, they surrounded the city, and they destroyed Jerusalem, and about 1 million Jews died during that time. It's kind of an ancient Holocaust is what happened.
Right.
The Christians were dispersed in the world, and the Roman Empire was in charge then, and they actually had outlawed Christianity. Many Christians were rounded up and thrown to wild beasts during public festivals simply because they would not compromise their faith in Christ. Now, by the 3rd century, the Roman Empire realized that they couldn't stamp out Christianity. So, you know what they did? They made it the state religion. But it was more of a political move on their part, and so a lot of compromise then came into the church at that time. As you read on, you read about people who stood up for their faith in God's Word at the peril of their own lives. For example, the Waldenses lived in Italy more than 1,000 years ago, and they had to escape into the Alps to raise their kids because of the persecution. Back then, Bibles were very scarce. There was no printing presses, so if you had one, it's because someone took the time to write it by hand. So these people had the Bible, persecuted because of it. And their children committed whole books of the Bible to memory because they didn't know if it would be confiscated. Now, in my opinion, that's a good place to store it, isn't it, in your head? Because you can't take it from there, can you?
No.
Now, you'll read about how the gospel spread throughout Europe. In England, God raised up a man by the name of John Wycliffe. Have you heard of him?
I think so.
he actually started translating the Bible from the Latin language into the English language. So we have him to thank for that, for having the Bible in English, or at least he started it. Then you read about John Huss and Jerome from Bohemia. These two guys were preaching the gospel there. They were both branded as heretics and burned at the stake for their faith. In Germany, God raised up a man by the name of Martin Luther. You probably heard of him. He translated the Bible from Latin into the German tongue for his countrymen. You read about the first printing press that was invented by a guy by the name of Gutenberg, Johann Gutenberg. Some strange names they had.
Yeah.
But this man invented the printing press, and guess what the first book that came off the press was?
The Bible?
It was the Bible.
Wow.
It was William Tyndale's Bible who finished the work that Wycliffe had started, finished the English Bible there. And it was one of the precursors to the King James Version of the Bible that we have today. Then you read about America's discovery, or rediscovery, of course. The Indians were already here, weren't they?
Right.
But we look at some of the founding fathers of our nation and the principles on which it was based on. For example, Roger Williams, he actually founded Rhode Island. It was one of the first states in the 13 colonies that offered religious freedom, for folks who come there. And he founded he was one of the founders of the Baptist Church. So you're going to get some church history in here, Lance, as you guys go through it.
Very nice.
You read also about John and Charles Wesley. These were two brothers. One was a historian, the other one was a theologian, and they founded the Methodist Church. So about that time, France actually banned God and the Bible from their nation in about the 16th, 1700s. There were public Bible burnings. In that time, a guillotine was set up. You remember that age in history? And historians call that the Reign of Terror. There was anarchy and mayhem that ensued, and thousands of people beheaded, for that. But 3.5 years later, the French government brought the Bible back to their nation because they saw what happens when you throw God out. The first Bible Society was born there. We can learn from history, and hopefully, we don't repeat the same mistakes. And sometimes we wonder if that's happening in our nation today.
Doesn't look good.
It doesn't look good at all. This right here shows you some prophecies that have fulfilled and are fulfilling today. This one looks at the seven seals in Revelation. You've heard of the seven seals. The sixth seal opened up with a great earthquake, and the stars fell from heaven. It said the sun was darkened. Now, these events actually took place back in the 1800s. There was a darkening of the sun that's documented in history, where the sun, it became dark as midnight at noon, all through the rest of the day. There was a great meteorite shower that took place as well in November 13, 1833. So those people that were living back then were living in the sixth seal of Revelation. You know what the seventh seal is?
No.
It's actually the second coming of Christ.
Amen.
Now everything has taken place except for that event. And that's, of course, we don't know the day or the hour of that time, but many Christians feel that we're living in that time now with things that are occurring in our world. It is. And that's the most important day that we can prepare our children for, isn't it?
Yes. Amen.
We can clothe them, feed them, educate them to be successful here, and as important that is, if they're not ready on this day, it's all short-lived.
Beautiful picture.
It is beautiful, isn't it? And I was noticing here, there's two groups of people, and there's only going to be two. Those that are ready, and those who are not. Of course, we want our kids with the ones that are ready, don't we? Now, Jesus does not force his way into our hearts, but for as many as receive him, what a reward, he's preparing for those. And the last chapter is called God's Perfect Playground. And John described heaven in Revelation 21:22. He described Jerusalem as a city of gold. The streets were paved with gold. The 12 gates are made of pearl. The foundations were made of different precious gems like rubies, diamonds, sapphires. Can't imagine a city like that, can you?
Not at all. Sounds beautiful.
And I can tell you this, I always tell those people, Lance, that if you had to pay for a spot there, you can afford it. And neither could Donald Trump with all his money.
That's right.
But I like how it says here, this has all been made possible because he sent his only son to die for us, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. And the last sentence says, I can't wait to be there. How about you?
Amen.
It's a good way to end it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's beautiful, Dad.
And we always tell people, start over again when you finish it. If you do a story a day during the week, that's 5 stories a week, you can read through the whole Bible in 1 year.
Nice.
It's a really neat way to go through it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the back of Volume 7, there's a 3-part index that lists the story several ways. The first index is a chronological listing from Genesis 1 to Revelation 22.
Okay.
Index 2 is listing it's a topical index that lists the great Bible teachings and the character building lessons. Like, for example, there's 2 stories on accepting others, both in volume 5, a couple stories on angels, a couple on anger, dealing with that. Here's even one that deals with complaining. I'm sure your kids never do that, do they?
No, my wife says I complain a lot.
Really?
Yeah.
So she probably want to read that. Here's one on disobedience. You know, the thing of it is we know the Bible teaches these lessons, but we're not always sure where we can find it when we need it. With this index, you can quickly refer to the stories that help teach those lessons and strike while the iron's still hot. The last index is your men and women of the Bible from A to Z, showing the volume page numbers where you can look those up. Let's take a peek at that, Lance. Now, do you have any other questions about the books, or did I explain it pretty well?
Oof, they're beautiful. No, you did an excellent job, and like I say, I hope we can afford them.
Well, I believe that we work with everyone's budget, but now how old did you say your kids were again?
1, 3, and 5, little doorsteps.
Okay.
Yeah.
We also have a set of bedtime stories too,
Okay.
that you could get along with the children's Bible stories. It's called Miss Brenda's Bedtime Stories. These are all nonfiction stories that teach some of life's most valuable lessons. For example, on dealing with, they have an index in the beginning of each book, shows you the traits of character that are taught.
Okay.
So you have, like, here's a story that actually deals with an angel. You know, we know that they're real,
Yeah.
but here's a story about somebody who actually encountered an angel. You know, we don't always get the privilege of seeing our angel. Maybe one day, you know, in heaven we'll get to see him. But
Right.
here's one on several on honesty, dealing with kindness, patience, and so you can turn to whatever story that you want to teach a lesson to and read it to them. At the end of the story, they have a Bible verse that's tied in with the story.
Very nice.
So you can actually, you know, got 128 stories and 128 verses, and you go with it to them on that. Now they do have some for the preschool children. I know you got a 1-year-old.
Yeah.
This is for 0 to 5. They're made with bigger pictures, smaller paragraphs. They use rhythm and repetition so the kids can learn to read at an early age. The lady who wrote it, she's a university-trained storyteller. She won 2 of the highest awards for contributing to character building small children.
Okay.
So they do have 5 of those, 20 Bible stories in 5 books with that.
Yeah.
But do you have any other questions other than get this, Lance? How little they cost and how you can get them?
No, I think you answered most of my questions. King James Bible, are they from?
It is King James based.
Okay.
They're actually based from the New King James Version of the Bible.
Okay.
I understand that there's not much difference except for the these and the thous.
We like using the NIV, but I'm just
NIV,
curious.
yeah. Have you ever had an opportunity, Lance, to price good books of this nature before?
You know, not really. I was in college, but you know, that's a long time ago. But
Mhm.
you know, there can be. Yeah.
As you can see, these are top quality books. In fact, the only thing that we have to compare with would be textbooks maybe, or even encyclopedias. Now, were you raised with encyclopedias, Lance? or-
I was.
Okay.
We didn't have World Book. We couldn't afford those, but
No.
I forget which ones we had. But they were encyclopedias in our little library. Yeah.
Okay. Well, World Book was real popular in the day when they were being sold. A brand new set of World Books for 32 volumes ran about $600. Childcraft could take you up to about $1,200. Of course, that went out of date. You had to get a yearbook to keep up with it. Whereas, you know, you don't need a yearbook with the Bible because it doesn't change. Britannica put out a set one time that it was a limited edition, leather-bound, gold-edged pages. Guess what the price tag was on that?
$1,000.
$3,000 for a set of encyclopedias. Now, we're not here to try to minimize the product or say it was unimportant, but you know, it went out of date. Most folks didn't read it from cover to cover, and of course it didn't teach right from wrong. The good news is our books aren't nearly as expensive as a set of the encyclopedias were. The entire, if you got the entire library, the complete family is about 45 books there. It would run about $1,500 for the whole thing.
How much?
$1,500 for the whole thing. Or you could start out with the beginner set,
Okay.
which is the children's Bible stories and the 5 for the adults. It's 12 books.
Okay.
Instead of several $1,000s, that set is only $370 for the 2 sets. Now, you can purchase it all at once, or we do have a payment plan that you can take advantage of as well. But as you're considering this, Lance, I just want to ask a very important question, and that is, where are your priorities? Now, this does not indicate the way that you're spending your money today or the way I'm spending mine, but as a nation, I'm trying to tell you we spend more than $50 billion every year on alcohol, $30 billion spent for fast food, $20 billion for tobacco. Of course, those three are just, people are spending money to kill themselves. We're just not thinking about it. We spend twice as much money feeding the animals as we do investing in good textbooks for our children. And these are not just ordinary textbooks, Lance, they're some of the best, when it comes to spiritual training. As concerned parents, we can reduce or skip some of the other things and put it where it does matter. And that's in the spiritual training. This side shows things that we can spend our money on over time at nickels and dimes us to death. We just don't think about it. Newspaper subscription on a weekly basis. 10 years later, $2,303 for an investment that usually ends up where?
In the garbage.
Garbage can. Many times on red. A pack of cigarettes, one a day for folks who smoke. 10 years later, $15,658. I was visiting with a family north of Asheville several years ago, and the father told me between he and his wife they smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day. We broke down that, and it was come to about $60,000 in 10 years. Now, when I shared that with the gentleman, he told his wife, he says, honey, I think we better quit smoking. And to tell you honest truth, I think they did, because they paid their books out in several months from the money they saved. Now, I think that's a much better way to spend money, don't you?
Absolutely.
The list goes on. Pizza every other week. 10 years later, $3,770. I do too. Can of soda a day, $1 can. That's not an uncommon price for soda.
Right.
But in 10 years later, $3,650. Cable TV. 10 years later, $41 a month, almost $5,000. Many times people can double that and quadruple that.
We pay more than that.
Do you? And the reason why we're saying 10 years, Lance, the books will last you much longer than that, and the benefits that you'll draw from using something like this far outweigh some of the temporary benefits that we get from things we don't even need. Now, if you were to consider this, Lance, there are 4 different payment plans that you can choose from. The company that I represent, again, is called Home Health Education Service,
Okay.
and they're out of Decatur, Georgia. They are old-fashioned. They still take cash. We call it Rockefeller program or the Bill Gates program.
Okay.
We do have a 90-day same as cash. We accept any major credit card, debit card. And then we have what we call the Christian budget plan, where you put down just enough to take care of the taxes and shipping. And then we bill you about 2 or 3 weeks later.
Okay.
Doesn't matter which plan you go with, the books would arrive at your home about 7 to 10 business days from today. That's when they come in. Now, out of the books I showed you, Lance, which of them caught your interest? The sets that I showed you, which caught your interest the most?
Well, I really like the children's books,
Mm-hmm.
the adult, and the family Bible. We need a family Bible.
Now, when you order the family Bible, we actually will, if you put those 2 sets together, if you put down this set and the
Yes.
adult commentary together,
Uh-huh.
I throw the family Bible in at about half price.
Okay.
Is what I do for that. Can I show you what that looks like on paper?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. That's it.
All right. Very good. Very good. Well, I don't know if we do any more recording, but thank you for that.